So thank you very much for your very interesting presentation. And I was quite amazed by the work you've done for children. I knew about it, but having had it presented was enriching for us as well. Okay. There, I have to run up now. It's a good exercise for me.
Tack. Thank you. Okay, my name is Tobias. I work with Scenekunstbruket. So I think maybe you answered this, but just to make sure, it's about the was it under the eider down?
Under the eider down, yeah.
Yeah. You said that you this or the show is put up in what, 40 different schools, many different schools.
Yeah.
And so do you every time is the bric-a-brac new every time, and does it stay? So is the workshop with you said you had a workshop where the designers listened to the children what would be in a bric-a-brac shop, and then they would go and make the bric-a-brac shop, and then the bric-a-brac stay up.
Yeah, it would stay for a short time. Is that the question? How long it stays for? Or?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is the whole process
about 3 weeks?
And so it's new for every school.
Yeah. We don't leave the bric-a-brac shop there because unfortunately we don't have that much resource. So we take it down after about 2 weeks. But each time the bric-a-brac shop is kind of rebuilt in response to the site and kind of on a few, design principles. And there's a few elements which are the same, but it's completely idiosyncratic to that school. So we respond to all of the children's responses and suggestions and try to include as many of those as possible. So bric-a-brac shops, they're generic, but each school has a brand new one. So it's a very kind of labour-intensive process.
Okay. I'm Associate Professor of Drama and Theatre, and I work in the Norwegian University of Science and Technology in Trondheim at the moment. And before I have, like previous life, I have been a puppeteer, and I have a puppet company, and I am very fond of beautiful objects, and I was very, very excited of your work. I like a lot materiality of and this kind of like real materiality, but I get to know almost every day that you have so many things in your working room, and it's like, I'm just keeping like part of all my treasures. So I'm really, how can you? How is that materiality? Where do you keep your materiality? How do you, because that's a great thing, isn't it?
We've got a big store.
Oh yeah.
We were really lucky. We're hoarders.
Yeah.
So the way we've made our work in the past it's really well resourced now. But in the past, it's been about skip diving. It's been about, and it's still about going to second-hand, going to jumble sales, going to car boot sales, as we call them in the UK. But often we buy new stuff or we make new stuff, but we do have a big store where we keep everything. So not as much as we
you
can.
Have a big store. Yeah. Because I feel it's so great if you can really store something which is now like destroyed in this IKEA culture. You understand? It's just, I think it's so amazing work. Thank you very much.
No, pleasure.
Okay. No? Yeah. I'm sorry about my...
No, this one.
Talk very loud.
Okay. Yeah. Hi, I'm Rebecca.
Hello.
I just wonder about the... Okay, I'm going to drop it.
Yeah, we have to drop this.
I can hear you.
Yeah, thanks. I was wondering about the larger shows like Drowned Man and the other ones. Do the different performances, do they go in loop, or is it more like occupying space over time, or mix that?
It's a combination of that. We have...
You need to talk into the mic.
It's a combination of those things. So we have a kind of core set of characters that we call travelling characters, and they essentially travel through the space. So they have 12 scenes, and scene 1 might start in the tavern, and then scene 2 they might go upstairs into the desert, and then scene 3 they might come back down again. So they have a travelling route around the building. In the drama man there's probably about 15 of those travelling characters, and they have these narrative arcs that if you follow them progress in a linear way, and they kind of, they climb, and then they crash, and then they resolve. And then we have a set of characters who we call residents, which, as the term implies, suggests that they are pretty much resident in one space. So that kind of means that the rhythm of their show is more durational. It's more about inhabiting and living, existing. If you're an audience, I hope you kind of realise that if you hang about with this character, not masses is going to change. You're going to see someone writing a letter, somebody sewing, and you choose whether you want to, if you're interested in that kind of story or that kind of energy. Whereas with the travelling characters, they have very clear vignettes. Choreographic, actually, most of them are all physically driven. There's not very much text or dialogue or spoken dialogue in the work. And then the show, each character has a loop of 1 hour, and then that loop repeats 3 times. And then at the end towards the end of the show, all of the characters come together in the drama man, they come to what is a wrap party for the filming. So then you have 20 or 30 characters all travelling towards one space, and then pulling all of the audience who up until that point have been split across the building, across 100 rooms, and then they all pull to one kind of central finale. So you kind of get a sense of, when it works best, you get a sense of that sort of shared experience of theatre, which excites us as well as the individual. Yeah.
Can it happen that you as an audience, you enter a space where there has been a character or something playing out and it's completely empty?
Yes, all the time. That's the kind of joy of it. So you could enter the tavern, for example, nobody's there, you're alone, and then within the next couple of minutes, 10 characters enter the tavern for a hoedown, bringing with them, up to 200 audience, and all of a sudden the space kicks off, and it's the wild, crazy, debauched party. And then that scene might finish with a solo, and then gradually characters leave, and you might just be left with a barman and a trickle of audience. So we're really interested in that sense of, a space always has an implied sense of narrative in our work, always. It should always function independently of action or animation, but then there's something magical that can happen when the spaces become alive, when you put a character in them.
How do you choose the text that you want to work with? You were reviewing the Scottish play, and how do you choose what makes you work?
I think we just, like lots of you really, you just, you have stories and plays and ideas that sit in a little bookshelf, up here somewhere, and then when we find a building, then we kind of look at those plays or sources that we're interested in, and we try and find the best match. So for Sleep No More, for example, we made that show originally in a boys' school, a Victorian boys' school called the Beaufoy Institute in London, and then Felix was scouting Boston for spaces to do Faust initially, and then he came across he was offered a high school, and it just felt like it lent itself to the show that we'd already made. The Drown Man was this huge cavernous warehouse space, which in order for us to make that space work, we knew we'd have to build lots of walls, and there would be a real feeling of kind of construction and things being very fake. So it felt like we wanted to embrace that kind of film studio aesthetic. So we took Wojciech, which has absolutely nothing to do with that, but we had the kind of The Day of the Locust text by Nathaniel West, and we thought it would be interesting, or Felix thought it would be interesting and surprising and odd and a challenge for us to take Buchanan's Wojciech and view it through this lens of kind of jaded Hollywood and look at the sort of status within it. So the space comes first, and then we always have a text to hang things on. Always have a kind of a skeleton of something that we can build around.
Microphone.
I have a question about the school work, because it's interesting that you say that the school curriculum will be central. And would it be central or important for being able to go into the schools so that the schools would ask for it? Or is it also important for you as artists that you can, or is it sometimes a conflict with the curriculum?
I think when you do something about literacy is prevalent throughout the curriculum, wherever you are, I'd imagine. But to take on these projects is a big ask of a school, and often a school that's already very busy and kind of juggling all sorts of different needs and kind of requirements. So it's increasingly recognizing the fact that this work and the impact that this work can have, and this work can have profound educational benefit, and it can impact attainment, and it can kind of engage and empower. So really, when you know you can do that, when you suddenly go, well, okay, and we're not sort of doing a piece about Tudors, or we're not doing a piece about Under the Sea, but actually the school, like in terms of the Lost Lending Library, what we don't want to do is add another kind of project to these teachers' workloads and go, oh, you're doing all of these things, why don't you do this other thing as well? It's like, what are you already doing? How can we fit what you're already doing into the structure of our project, so that what we're doing, which we know will help your pupils and we know will excite and engage your pupils, will also then be useful to you as a teacher. Because sometimes when we've done projects in the past, it's Black History Week, it's kind of, we've got another author in, we're doing the school play, and actually this kind of work, to make it really successful, needs time and needs kind of the curriculum cleared. So as easy as we can make it for schools to kind of get on board and to kind of streamline it into what they're already doing, the better. And it doesn't mean we make something which is about their curriculum. We make something which becomes a vehicle for them to explore the curriculum which is already there. Because the work we're doing, it doesn't easily fit in the education bracket when you come around to funding. It sits in the artistic side, but actually I would argue it's about education, it's about attainment, and it's about making us view school and what school can be and what education should be about in a different way, and thinking about how best we learn and how best we are absorb and are inspired. So yeah, it's increasingly massively important to do that. But sometimes we went to a school recently and said we don't want it to be anything to do with the curriculum, we just want it to be about play, which of course is massively important within the curriculum in a holistic sense. So depends. It's a conversation between a school. It's a constant conversation.
What is the total staff size that you're working with? I mean, like when you come in, there's probably different phases of building, engaging the students, developing the strategy. What is the
So we've got a core team of just gone up to 3 core enrichment staff. In terms of the project staff, once a project's created, and we generally create a project with design head, performer head, and we'll have talked to the school as well. But in terms of the project team, you've got a production manager, who's the key liaison person with the school. You've got a performer and often a facilitator who plays a performative role, but they're the link between the real world and this narrative world. And then you've got 2 designers as well, and then design assistants and casual technicians who come in as well. That's about the size of it, but there's a core team back at the office of 3.
How many people do the build so that you have this complete environment from 2 days over a weekend?
The build, yeah, so there's a bit of prep time, depending on the project. It's probably about a week's prep time, but there's 2 designers, and then we might bring in a carpenter or 2 and a technician to help install the tech setup. So It varies. It varies, but there's probably, we use volunteers quite a lot as well. A big part of our programme is making sure that all of the work we do offers a developmental opportunity for developing artists and people with an interest in this kind of work. So it's kind of a mixture of people. But I'd say there's probably about a team of 4 designers on the build, and then a production manager and technicians. So. We've got a big store. Often stuff's bought, but every project we aim to acquire more. It's been quite tricky having the drown man on, because if you think there's a lot of props in one room in a school, there's a lot of props in 200 rooms in a sorting office. So we're luckily, because we've done these big shows in the past, we've got these props that are sitting there, and we use them for our education projects. But a big store, lots of knowing where the right car boot sales are, and knowing how to get a bargain. So
the company's it's 13 years old, and it's probably kept I would say we've probably kept
too much.
80% of our material, and we've moved it around, from attics to spare bedrooms to a little store to a bigger store. So it's about time and investment, actually.
Every time you chuck something away, general rule is the next month you need it. So you go, why am I keeping that roll of whatever I'm keeping? It's just a pain in the bum, and I keep tripping over it. And then you chuck it away, and then you do a project, or somebody goes, oh, have you got any of that roll of something that you keep tripping over? And you're like, oh no, not anymore. I chucked it away. So the hoarding is good.
Last question then.
Okay.
I just wanted to ask, in this scene no more, where you give the audience the masks and they can stay in the space for many, many hours or do whatever they want, how do they behave? What happens? Can you just imagine, you said something about people feel that they can do a bit more what they want because they don't have to take care of what other people think or things like this. I was just curious.
I mean, they can stay in the show for up to 3 hours, and people don't undergo radical personality transplants when they put a mask on. Generally, people are cautious. People work out. Audiences work out how to play the game, and they behave relatively respectfully. So you see it takes. You see people. You see the audience in the first half an hour. You see them warming up, being cautious. In Sleep No More, I have a sweet shop. You see them go past the sweet shop, see the sweets, come back in again, go in the sweet shop, come back out again, go in the sweet shop, take some sweets, and so people work out generally what they're invited to explore, and then you do get people who want to mess the game up. You do get people who will put a hat on, put a dress on, and run around the building just because they feel like they see what they can get away with. That happens less rarely, and then you do get idiots, like we do in all, who might poke performers, and then we just have systems in place for those people to be addressed. It's not a free for all, but there's definitely a huge generosity that we offer, we make available to the audience.
But do the performers, if I would go over to you as a performer, could I start talking to you? Or?
No, I mean, because you'd work that out unless you were a little bit strange, because the performance is essentially physical, so it would be very, it's in some ways it becomes kind of conventional sometimes. A scene happens and the audience conventionally gather around it. Other things that happen in the work is we have these we call them these one-on-one events, where certain characters who can see the audience, generally if they're dead or supernatural or magical, they see you, they see the mask. Lots of the characters don't see the masks. The mask makes you invisible. And in those moments, a character might see you, take your hand, and bring you into a locked space, which is as designed and as conceived as all of the other spaces. And then they will reveal a short 2 to 3 minute secret about their journey. And those scenes are very set and they're very specific. So there's a real feeling of spontaneity and chaos in the work, but it's really rigorous. And once you, as an audience, you work that out very quickly because you start to feel the repetition. And that fight or that kiss that you've just encountered around the corner, then you might stumble upon that exact same moment an hour later.
Very last thing. Does the audience get the instructions when they enter?
They do. I mean, they do. They have the sort of. They come into a lift sequence, and in the Drowned Man, actually, there's a kind of voiceover. So it's kind of cased in the theatrical language, but there's information about what you should do and what you shouldn't do.
It's not somebody going, "Do not take off your mask," or it's.
It's a character, and it's telling you to tread carefully, and that there's no talking when filming is happening, and so you kind of have to work a little bit to interpret the instructions, but people generally, they get it.
We try not to give too much away before you go into the show, so that you receive it in a pure way. So,
I mean, ideally we'd say nothing, and in the beginning we said nothing, but that actually we worked out it wasn't helpful. People became too frustrated trying to work out what you were supposed to do. So now we just gradually worked out over the years what was the minimum information that we could give and how we could give that in a kind of delicious, enticing way.
I've got a gift for you here. Thank you so much for taking time to come visit us and to give the very, very inspiring workshop yesterday and talk today. This is Norwegian children's literature. It's the best-selling book for children for many years, and it's quite new. And it's also the most popular in the libraries, which is not very often the same book. So it's a good children's book. So for the images, I can brought it for you. It's she's a talented illustrator. So it's about 3 billy goats. Is that what they call it in English?
Yeah.
But they don't want to go to the mountains. They want to go to the swimming hall.
Of course.
Swimming pool. Okay. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.